want to continue to go through the verses, or you want me to hop on the geography?
I would like you to hop on the geography.
Okay. So let's go to the geography of these things. Okay. Yeah. Where did most of this stuff take place? Most of these stories in this Bible, where did they take place?
Middle East, Africa.
Okay. Well, not really the Middle East. Really, mostly Africa. Almost all of it is African. So Jesus
except
himself,
for the things that happen in Egypt and in Israel.
Egypt is in Africa. No.
Egypt is in Africa.
Correct.
People. Okay. So here's one of the biggest things that people do consistently is they say that Egypt is in the Middle East.
Yeah.
It is not.
This
is like telling a person they're partially pregnant.
Yeah.
There's no such thing.
I mean, I'm from Egypt. My heritage is Egypt.
Okay, so then
so
Egypt
it's in Africa.
Where?
Africa.
Okay. Correct. And as you go up into Egypt, you end up where? Where's the next? There's two countries, right? Which is Ethiopia and the Sudan. Okay. What do those people look like?
Ethiopia, dark, and Sudan, a little less dark.
Until you and as you go further, you're even darker than the Ethiopians. Okay. So this is where this takes place. So for us to believe,
just real quick, are you following him, Eric? Real quick. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Okay. So if we are to pretend like, so now let's state on the basis of African, right? So Jesus was born where?
Bethlehem.
Which is in?
Middle East.
No, it is not. Bethlehem sits on the African tectonic plate. He was an African. See, we got to stop using the Middle East is a new term.
Yes, that's not an old term. That's a new term.
It's not an old term. It's a new term. There's no Middle West. There's no Middle South. This is the psychology of words. Just like I tried to mention before. These are new. The term Middle East is new. You didn't have, okay, let's go to an 1870 map. It sure didn't say Middle East on it.
That's right. Palestine is known for Palestine is Muslims and people who are.
See, that's the part I was talking about.
Converted, but people were converted to Muslim through Arabs. Okay. People were converted to that. They didn't start out that. But this was if you look up Islam technically actually came from the Catholic Church. It is not a religion unto itself. This is why when you see the Pope go to the Middle East, he still commands the same commands as he does when he's in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be the seat of the Antichrist.
Well, yeah, but when you take and put that geography together, okay, when you take and you put that geography together with it, a lot of things don't fit that you've been told. So we can establish that Jesus was born in Africa and he's an African, regardless. Now, I don't know too many Caucasian Africans. An Egyptian's not a Caucasian. You may be lighter in skin, but you're not a Caucasian.
Do you know what happened in 70 AD, Eric?
70 AD. No, tell me.
Go ahead, Barack. Okay. Because see, 70... this is why, just real quick, this is why so many people get so confused about skin color, is because something happened in 70 AD. So go ahead, Barack.
So in 70 AD, Jerusalem was destroyed. This is 70 years after Jesus' death.
Yeah.
The Jews that were there were scattered into mostly Africa. Some went north, Some went to Spain, some went to Portugal. The others scattered into Western Africa. It's not their home. So what we do is we say, well, Africans sold themselves into slavery. That's not what happened. When the Jews were sent into Africa, to Spain and to Portugal, the Spanish Inquisition was really them chasing the Jews out of Spain and Portugal, also back into Africa, and then they were shipped from there to the United States. This is the right.
Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 26 is I said, I would scatter them into corners. I will make them the remembrance of them to seize from among them. But go ahead. And 28.
Right. So let's go to the word scatter, right? If you've ever had rocks, gravel, or seeds, right? A scattering is a force. A scattering is not just something that you drop. A scattering is I'm forcing people. So when he says, I'm going to scatter you, I'm going to put you in places that you've never been. And I'm going to scatter you out and amongst all of the corners of the earth. This doesn't mean that you hopped on a ship to find a new world and a new place.
Mm-hmm.
You were forced to go to a new world and a new place. That's why I said I will scatter you. So who else has been scattered other than the people that you see here? How did I get here?
How did I get here? From Cuba.
Right. We didn't come on ships unchained. We were chained. We were forced to come over. The Bible says yokes of iron in the 48th verse of the 28th chapter of Deuteronomy says that there are yokes of iron. So if somebody can explain
let me read that. Therefore,
go ahead.
Thou serve thy enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst. Who does that fit? And in nakedness. Who does that fit? And in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. Who does that fit historically on a worldwide scale for over 400 years? Who has?
Let me surprise you. Everything you just stated can easily fit with this slave trade that happened in America from Africa.
That's a transatlantic. That's a transatlantic slave trade.
Correct. So every single detail you just described fits that. Now the question is that correct regarding transatlantic slave trade? That's the question, because the
Go
Jews
to Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68.
Okay. Now let's dissect it. I mean, I'm there. I'm already in 28.
What does Egypt? What does Egypt mean in Hebrew?
You're going to tell me it means bondage.
I'm not going to tell you.
Bondage.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even in the Bible, that's what it means. I'm not telling you anything.
But then how do you explain in other parts of the King James Bible that uses the word slavery and bondage? Why doesn't it just use Egypt?
Because God puts the words in the way he wants to. See, yes. There's a great mystery. See, a lot of times you got to remember this book was written to slaves, not to the rich people. it was mainly written to slaves. So a lot of people won't get it, because it's easy for me to get that there's an Egyptian pyramid on a dollar bill. Why is there an Egyptian pyramid on a dollar bill? There's a lot of reasons for it, but there's also, this is our bondage. What happens is that people who never experienced this, it confounds them. They don't get it. They don't have it in their DNA. They don't have it in their ancestry. For instance, another person from another race, their ancestors are not crying aloud like we are, if you want to talk like that, like as far as like my DNA, Barak's DNA, we feel these scriptures. It jumps out at us. It speaks to us. Other people, go ahead.
Yeah. So what happens is people say, well, this has happened someplace else, but they can never tell me the someplace else.
Yeah, and if we could stay on verse 68, I was just looking here, because it says, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, and thou shalt see it no more again. and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen. But here's the part that I think doesn't stand out enough for you, is where it says, and no man shall buy you. And
That
back
means to
then,
buy you from freedom during the 400
They can't,
years.
right? They
you sure
cannot
that's not
buy
Buy
you out
you,
of the
they can't
bondage.
buy you
so
out of the
you're
bondage
so how do
until
you know that
things.
that doesn't mean that a slave owner won't buy you? So you won't even get a job is essentially what I think it's
Well,
saying.
okay.
What?
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
show you. I'm gonna explain to you how the bondage continues. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's through America. It's through wealth. Okay. So I'm gonna show you that black people, even though we may seem free, right? We're not. The amount of American wealth that black people owned out of slavery was 1%. The amount of wealth that black people own this day is 1.5%. If you do not have your own land under your feet and you do not have wealth, you don't have anything. You are still in bondage. So how are we here for over 400 years and don't own anything? We rent.
The mass majority. Don't say, well, there's an NBA star, there's this. Most
Right.
of those guys are sellouts anyway.
Well, even with the money that they make, how do black people only own 1.5% of all American wealth if the $400 million that they're going to pay a football player or whatever is significant? It's not.
I mean, a major edge that people have if they have wealth is if their ancestors handed things down to them.
Well,
And-
Right.
we see
Yeah.
that every day, every time
Right.
we're cutting their grass.
Right. I see the wealth. I built
Bro, which is what